Jesus warned us, when this peace deal is signed, time runs out. Jesus gave us clear warnings about the last days. And in the last days, a particular deal will bring about the worst season in human history. I am about to walk you through 7 discoveries that reveal what Jesus actually warned us about. Number 1. We need to start where Jesus started, because most people skip straight to the book of Daniel when they talk about end times prophecy. But that is not where this begins. It begins on a hillside overlooking Jerusalem, with Jesus, sitting with his closest disciples, answering the most important question they ever asked him. They wanted to know when the end would come, and Jesus did not brush them off. He did not say it was none of their business. He sat them down and gave them the most detailed prophetic teaching recorded anywhere in the Gospels. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Stop and absorb what just happened. Jesus, the Son of God, standing on the Mount of Olives overlooking the temple, tells his closest followers to go read Daniel. He does not point them to Isaiah. He does not reference Ezekiel. He takes them to one specific prophet and one specific event, the abomination of desolation. And he says, when you see it, not if. When. Now, why does this matter for a peace deal? Because the abomination Jesus is warning about does not appear out of nowhere. Daniel reveals that it occurs at the exact midpoint of a specific agreement, a covenant, a deal confirmed with many nations for a period of 7 years. The abomination is not the beginning of the end. It is the result of a deal that already started the clock years earlier. Jesus is not just warning about an event. He is warning about the agreement that makes the event possible. And that agreement looks exactly like what the world would call a peace deal. And then he adds something that should make every person alive today pay attention. That parenthetical, whoso readeth, let him understand. Jesus is not just talking to his disciples. He is speaking through time. He is saying, whoever is reading these words when that moment arrives, understand what is happening. Recognize it. Do not be caught off guard. But here is what most people miss entirely. Before Jesus tells us what the abomination of desolation is, we need to understand where it sits inside a larger timeline. Because this event does not happen in isolation. It happens at a very specific point inside a very specific period. And when we reach Discovery 3, you will see that Daniel pinpoints the exact moment this abomination occurs, down to the midpoint of a 7-year covenant, a multinational, Israel-centered peace agreement that the world will celebrate as the greatest diplomatic achievement in history. But first, you need to hear what Jesus said happens after the abomination, because the weight of this cannot be overstated. Matthew 24:21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Let that sink in. Jesus said the period following this event will be the worst suffering in the history of the human race. Worse than the flood, worse than the plagues of Egypt, worse than every war, every genocide, every famine combined. Nothing in human history will compare to what happens after the abomination of desolation is set up. Nothing that comes after it will ever match it either. It is singular. It is unprecedented. Matthew 24:22. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Without divine intervention, no human being would survive this period. That is what Jesus said. The tribulation would be so severe, so total, so devastating, that if God did not cut it short, humanity would be completely annihilated. This is not poetry. This is the Son of God telling us what is coming. And all of it, every seal, every trumpet, every bowl of wrath described in Revelation, traces back to a single trigger event, a covenant, a peace deal, an agreement that the world will applaud when it is signed, never realizing it just started a countdown to the worst period in human existence. And here is what makes this even more chilling, and this connects directly to what you will see in Discovery 5. Jesus also described the conditions leading up to the abomination, and they do not look like chaos. They look like the opposite. They look like everything the world has been hoping for. They look like the fruit of a successful peace agreement. Matthew 24:38-39. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day, normal life, comfortable life, unsuspecting life. That is the setup. That is the trap. The world will not see it coming because everything will feel fine. The deal will be working. The peace will be holding. Nations will be cooperating. And no one will suspect that the agreement they celebrated is the very instrument measuring out their final years. By the time they realize what has happened, the clock will have already been ticking for years. You will see that by the time the betrayal happens, the world has already been inside the final 7 years for over 1,000 days without knowing it. And the deal is what started it. So what is this clock? What starts it? What event triggers the final countdown that leads to the abomination, the tribulation, and the return of Christ? And to understand exactly what this deal looks like and why it matters more than any other agreement in history, we have to do exactly what Jesus told us to do. We have to go to Daniel. And what Daniel reveals is going to change how you see everything. Because it is not just a prophecy. It is a mathematical countdown that was fulfilled once already, down to the exact week at the first coming of Christ. And it has one final week remaining. One final 7-year period. Triggered by one specific deal. 2,500 years ago, the prophet Daniel was living in exile in Babylon. Jerusalem had been destroyed. The temple was in ruins. The Jewish people had been ripped from their homeland. And Daniel was praying. He was on his knees, fasting, mourning, confessing the sins of his people and begging God for answers. How long would this last? When would God restore Israel? When would the promises be fulfilled? And God answered, not vaguely, not in riddles. He sent the angel Gabriel with one of the most stunning revelations in all of Scripture. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Now, this is where most people get confused and stop reading. But do not turn away from this, because what God just revealed to Daniel is the entire timeline of human redemption compressed into a single verse. And the math is extraordinary. The Hebrew word translated as weeks here is shabuim. It does not mean 7 days. It means sevens, units of 7. And in prophetic context, each unit represents 7 years. So 70 weeks equals 70 units of 7. That is 490 years. God told Daniel that 490 years were determined upon his people, the Jews, and upon his holy city, Jerusalem. 490 years to accomplish 6 things. Finish transgression. End sin. Make reconciliation. bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy. That is the complete plan of God for redemption, laid out in a single prophetic sentence. 490 years. Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. The clock starts with a specific historical event, the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Scholars have identified this as the decree of Artaxerxes in 445 BC, recorded in Nehemiah chapter 2. From that moment, Gabriel tells Daniel to count 69 weeks. That is 69 times 7. 483 years. And here is where it gets breathtaking. If you take 483 prophetic years, each consisting of 360 days, according to the Jewish prophetic calendar, and you count forward from 445 BC, you arrive at a very specific date in history. You arrive at the exact week that Jesus Christ rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, the triumphal entry, the moment the crowds shouted, "Hosanna," the moment Jesus presented himself publicly as the Messiah. 483 years, predicted to the week, centuries before it happened. Now think about that. God gave Daniel a countdown, and 69 of those 70 weeks were fulfilled with mathematical precision at the first coming of Christ. 69 weeks accounted for. The streets were rebuilt. The walls were restored. The Messiah arrived. Exactly on schedule. But notice something. 69 weeks have been fulfilled. The total is 70. That means 1 week remains. One final unit of 7. 7 years. And that final week has not yet started. Between the 69th week and the 70th week, there is a gap, a pause in the prophetic clock. And during that pause, something monumental happened. The Messiah was cut off. Daniel 9:26 says, "And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself." Jesus was crucified, not for his own sins, for ours. And after that, the people of the Prince that shall come destroyed the city and the sanctuary. In 70 AD, the Roman armies under Titus leveled Jerusalem and burned the temple to the ground, exactly as Daniel predicted. But here is what is truly chilling about that destruction, and this connects directly to Discovery 4. When Titus destroyed the temple, he did not just end an era, he created a prophetic requirement, because Daniel's final week demands something that has not existed since that day: a functioning temple, with sacrifices, with an altar. And when you see what is quietly being prepared in Jerusalem right now, you will understand why that single event in 70 AD set up a prophetic domino that is still falling today. Which brings us to the most important question in all of biblical prophecy. What starts the clock again? What triggers the final 7 years? The answer is in the very next verse. And when you read it, you will understand why every peace agreement involving Israel matters more than the world realizes. This single verse may be the most consequential prophecy in the entire Bible, because it tells us exactly what launches the final 7 years of human history. Not a war, not a natural disaster, not a supernatural sign in the sky. A covenant. Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Every single word in this verse matters. So let me break it down piece by piece. Because when you see what Daniel is actually describing, you will understand why this prophecy has made scholars, theologians, and world leaders uneasy for centuries. First, he shall confirm the covenant. The word confirm is critical. Daniel does not say create. He does not say invent. He does not say propose. The Hebrew word here is higbir, and it means to strengthen, to make strong, to enforce, to make prevail. This is someone taking something that already exists, perhaps a framework, perhaps a set of negotiations, perhaps an agreement that has been discussed but never finalized, and confirming it, making it binding, making it official, making it strong. Think about what that implies, and hold this thought, because when we reach Discovery 7, you will see that the world is already constructing exactly the kind of framework that could be confirmed in exactly this way. The infrastructure is not theoretical. It is operational. Right now, this covenant is not born out of thin air. It is built on top of something, an existing diplomatic framework, ongoing negotiations, a structure that the world has been constructing for years. And then one leader steps forward and confirms it, locks it in, makes it unbreakable. Second, with many. This is not a deal between two nations. This is multilateral, multiple parties, multiple nations, multiple signatories, and it is centered on Israel. The entire context of Daniel chapter 9 is about Daniel's people and Daniel's holy city, the Jews and Jerusalem. So this is a multinational covenant involving Israel and many other nations or entities. Remember this phrase, with many, because what you will see in Discovery 7 is a coalition of over 35 nations already cooperating on Israeli security in a way that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Third, for 1 week, one prophetic week, 7 years. This is a time-bound agreement. It has a defined duration. It is not open-ended. It is not indefinite. It is specifically structured to last 7 years. And that 7-year period is the 70th week of Daniel. The final 7 years. The moment this covenant is confirmed, the prophetic clock that has been paused for 2 millennia resumes. And it does not stop until every remaining prophecy is fulfilled. Fourth, in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. At the 3.5-year mark, something catastrophic happens. The leader who confirmed this covenant turns. The sacrifices that had been restored in the temple are suddenly halted. Worship is shut down, and in its place, something abominable is established. But here is something that should immediately raise a question in your mind. And this is exactly what Discovery 4 addresses. How can sacrifices be stopped if they have not been started? How can temple worship cease if there is no temple? That question changes everything. Fifth, for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. This is the abomination of desolation, the desecration of the holiest place on earth, the exact event Jesus warned about in Matthew 24:15. And from that moment forward, the world enters the most terrifying period in human history. Now, do you see why Jesus pointed to Daniel? Do you see why he said, "Whoso readeth, let him understand"? Because Daniel did not just describe the abomination, he described the entire sequence, the covenant that starts the clock, the peace that defines the first half, the betrayal that shatters the midpoint, and the devastation that consumes the second half. It is all here, in one verse, written 2,500 years ago. And the clock starts not with the abomination, not with the tribulation, not with chaos. The clock starts with a covenant, a deal, a peace agreement. That is what Jesus was warning us about, and that is why we need to understand what this covenant requires, because one of its requirements reveals something that most people have never considered, and it involves 35 acres of land that could reshape the entire world overnight. There is a detail buried inside Daniel 9:27 that most people read right past without realizing it changes the entire prophetic landscape. And when you understand what it requires, you will see why current events in Jerusalem are more significant than almost anyone is reporting. Daniel says that in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. But here is the question I foreshadowed moments ago, and now it demands an answer. How can sacrifices be stopped if they have not been started? How can temple worship cease if there is no temple? There has been no Jewish temple in Jerusalem since 70 AD. That is nearly 2,000 years. When the Roman general Titus destroyed the Second Temple, not one stone was left upon another. Jesus predicted this in Matthew 24:2. And since that day, the Jewish people have not offered sacrifices. They cannot, because according to the Torah, sacrifices can only be offered at the temple in Jerusalem. No temple, no altar, no sacrifices, no sacrifices, no oblation to cease. Which means Daniel 9:27 requires something that has not existed for 2 millennia. A functioning temple, with an altar, with priests, with daily sacrifices. And here is what should make you sit up and pay attention. The preparations for exactly this are further along than most people realize. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has spent decades recreating the sacred vessels described in the Torah: the golden menorah, the silver trumpets, the table of showbread, the priestly garments. These are not replicas for a museum. These are consecrated instruments built to exact biblical specifications, intended for use in a rebuilt temple. Levitical priests have been identified through DNA testing. Training programs exist for priestly service. Architectural blueprints for a third temple have been drawn. Red heifers, required for purification rituals described in Numbers chapter 19, have been raised and inspected. The only obstacle is the Temple Mount itself, the most contested 35 acres on the face of the earth. Currently home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Any construction on that site would be the most explosive geopolitical event in modern history. It would require international agreement. It would require multinational security guarantees. It would require exactly the kind of covenant Daniel described. Do you see the connection? The peace deal and the temple are not separate prophetic threads. They are woven together. A covenant with many that provides security for Israel and allows temple worship to resume is not just plausible. It is the only scenario that satisfies every element of Daniel 9:27 simultaneously. No temple means no sacrifices. No sacrifices means no midpoint event. No midpoint event means the prophecy cannot unfold. But once that temple stands, once those sacrifices begin, the entire prophetic sequence is unlocked. And it all hinges on a covenant, a deal, an agreement. But here is what makes this truly ominous, and this is something that becomes crucial in the very next discovery. Once that covenant is confirmed, and the temple is functioning, the world will not feel like it is living inside a prophetic countdown. It will feel like it is living inside a golden age. And that false sense of security is the most dangerous part of the entire prophecy.